Hello, everybody. Today's review is going to be of a show called Masters of the Air, which was recommended to me by another person that I work with. So I guess I'm going through quite a few recommendations of stuff. But then I'm going to get back to the beginning of my list to do a couple movies so I can sit down and watch some series that are a bit longer. Just because I want to do, like, Shameless, which is a very long show, and a show called Glitch, which I think is about 3 seasons long. And I do really like to get the whole show done at one time if I can, but with Shameless, I might not be able to do that, so we'll see. But I'm going to do a couple movies before we get into that, just because, but I also have another show that I'm going to watch right now, the new Game of Thrones show. I can't, the title's slipping my mind right now, but anyway, today is all about Masters of the Air, which is on Apple TV, or I guess Apple TV is also on Prime if you want to subscribe to it there. I already had Apple TV, so I didn't really think I needed to worry about subscribing to it twice for sure. But we will go over the cast list, I guess, at least of the most important standout characters as far as I was concerned throughout the show, the ones that really kind of stuck with you. So we had Callum Turner, who played Major John Bucky Egan, Austin Butler, who played Major Gale Buck Evans, Anthony Boyle, who played Lieutenant Harry Crosby, and then he was eventually upgraded to captain, and then eventually he reached the rank of major. I guess, yeah, his rank went up through the show. Nate Mann, who played Lieutenant Robert Rosie Rosenthal, say that 5 times fast, who was also started out as lieutenant and then, went up in the ranks, captain to major, sort of thing. Same as Crosby. So they were there from the very beginning, right? And they moved up in ranks. So it was kind of cool to see that throughout the show. Kai Alexander, who played Sergeant William Quinn. Louis Gretton Torix, who played Lieutenant Bubbles Payne, who was best friends with Crosby. And then we had Sam Hazeldine, who played Lieutenant Albert Bub Clark, who was more of a staple, I would say, probably near the end of the show when they're being transported all over Germany from prison camp to prison camp sort of thing, when the Allies are getting closer to the Americans that are being kept as POWs. And then we had Belle Powley as Sandra Westgate, who I guess was sort of like a love interest for... well, wasn't sort of like a love interest, was a love interest of Crosby while he was overseas. So I guess none of them were really extremely faithful to their own wives back home, except for maybe Buck. I think he was the only one that was like, that kind of kept it in the lines, right? And of course, I don't think Bucky never settled down. He was never like, until I guess after the war, from what I can see, yeah. So I guess he was single, so he could do whatever he wanted, right? Then we had Brandon Cook as Lieutenant Alexander Jefferson, who was part of like not the bomber crew, but the B-51s, I believe is what they were called. If I'm mistaken about that, I have it in my notes. So we'll get to that part later too. And then we had Nakuti Gatwa, who played Lieutenant Robert H. Daniels, and Josiah Cross, who played Lieutenant Richard D. McCon. I want to say is how you pronounce that last name. So now we'll touch on kind of like what happens throughout the show. So it is kind of sad to see them have to obviously go, because you don't know if they're going to make it back, especially the type of missions they were doing, right, was absolutely crazy. So where did I start? Where did I start my notes? Where is episode 1? I will find it here in a second. Oh my God. Come on now. Where is it? Oh, right here. This page right here. So I did give this a rating of 9 out of 10. In case I didn't already say that. So in episode 1, it's kind of like, they're leaving their wives or girlfriends, whatever you want to call it, at home. obviously their families too if they didn't have like a significant other. So not an easy thing to do when you know you're going into war. And the Americans did like the daytime bombing and the Brits did the nighttime bombing. So it was two very different games that they were playing, right? So they talk about the 100th, which is obviously what Buck and Bucky are a part of, I do believe. So on May 21st, the 389th bomb drop on Whistlehavens, Germany, I believe. And then we go to the Bluey West 1 airfield in South Greenland. So that is where I believe these guys are stationed. So they're traveling from Greenland all the way to wherever they're targeting each episode, right? And Gail Glevin was the commander of the 350th. So that would have been... Oh, I guess Major Gail Buck Evans, not Gail Glevins. Jesus, I had that written down wrong. Yeah, so Gail Evans was the commander of the 350th, which is what we learn. And then I can't remember exactly what it was. Oh, no, I guess it was England that they were stationed in at Thorpe Abbott's Air Base. Or was that the air base that they ended up at after Greenland? I'm trying to remember exactly, like there's a lot of traveling in this, so forgive me if I mistake some of the travel parts in this for sure. And then we go to the office of Colonel Harold Q. So he was a CO of the 100th Bomb Squad. 100th Bomb, or Colonel Harold Q. Huglin was the CO of the 100th Bomb Squad. So I guess he was more in charge of, like, he kind of oversaw every operation, essentially. And then I think it was it 0300 hours when they were woken up for their first mission altogether. But of course they can't leave during the nighttime because that's when the Brits do their operations. So episode 2 goes into 3 weeks later. Or I guess that might have been the time they were called over to the office. Was that right? See, there's certain dates I have written down here that I'm like remembering slowly as I go. So 3 weeks later, we reach July 16th, 1943. We get like a idea that the Americans are doing the precision bombing and the Britons are doing the nighttime area bombing. And then we go into like the big battle off the coast of Norway, 30 minutes from the target. We see parts of Fraserburgh, Scotland, when one of the planes has to crash land there. And then, again, we go into like our next target in episode 3, of course. The skies over Belgium, 4 hours to target. The 300th gets taken out completely. So some of them land in Flanders, Belgium. I do believe, yeah, so some of them have landed in like a complete enemy territory, right? So then we get over the Italian Alps, which is 5 hours to Algeria. So this is after we've done the whole bombing, right? And then they're over the Mediterranean, which is 2 hours to Algeria. So they were trying to land in Africa, and then they finally do make it. But it took them a while before the other people, or the rescue crew came to get them. So they were pretty battered and beat up by the time they got to Algeria. And it was lucky that most of them even made it. Some of them had to still even stay behind, right? And we'll talk about more of the fact that I think everybody gets taken out in that episode, and there's only like one plane left that actually I know in one of the episodes there's only one plane back that makes it back. So then we get into them being rescued in episode 4 on August 20th, 1943, and then on September 16th, 1943, I believe, what was it that happened in Paris? I think it was some of the soldiers that end up being told to take some leave or whatever. So that was kind of like I guess you could say like a filler episode essentially. But then in episode 5 was the big one where everybody gets taken out. They only had like a certain amount of, I think it was like 13, between 13 and 15 planes left, and everybody gets taken out. And of course, you don't know who's survived, who hasn't, sort of thing, except for, of course, Bucky, who has landed in Germany, like right on German soil, in Westphalia, Germany. So now he's in the thick of it, right? He doesn't know if he's going to make it or not. Obviously, he does get captured in Westphalia, Germany, and we find out that 32 of the 35 original crews are missing. Oh yes, this is when Crosby goes to Balliol College in Oxford, and what was it? That was where he met. Oh my God, forgive me. Episode. No, I wrote down like episode 6 somewhere. Where is it? Oh, that is episode 6. Okay. So then we get into the prisoner of war camps, the Dulag Luft, which is the prisoner of war camp right in Frankfurt, Germany. And Luftwaffe. Why does it? I'm so controlled. Luftwaffe controlled. Why did I write that down? I'm so confused. Then we go into the Stalag Luft 3. So I believe they were moving by that time, right? That was October 17th, 1943. And that was in Sagan, Germany. So I think we're like slowly moving deeper and deeper into Germany by this point, because this is showing like everybody who's captured. And then at one point I know that Bucky and Buck reunite, but I can't remember which one it was that they reunited in. So anyhow, then we go into episode 7, and we're starting off at the Stalag Luft 3 in Sagan, Germany, in March of 1944. It's run by the German Air Force. And then we have the Black Monday, where most of the crews don't make it back out of I think a 33 airplane crew. There was only like 13 that returned, so they lost quite a bit. They lost, I think, like, what did they say, between 15 and 17 jets that day. But we are introduced to the P-51 Mustang fighter jet, so on the American side. So instead of just having, the fighter jets from the German side, we actually have the Americans kind of, leveling the playing field a little bit instead of just bombing targets all the time. Now, unfortunately, one of the sides of that was sad to see was that I think a lot of the time the Brits were hitting civilians, and of course that's going to be a casualty of war, but it is kind of an unfortunate. I don't really think there's any great casualties in war, whether you're a soldier fighting for your cause or you're just a civilian kind of caught in the middle of it, right? Like, it's all senseless to me as to why we are, like, what are we really fighting over anyway, or fighting for? Do we truly really know in any of the wars that we've been in? Like, obviously we have our reasons for fighting when we're called upon by our allies, but at the end of the day, it all just seems like a bunch of senseless death, because if you're taking up arms, you're taking it up for what you're being told, right? That you're defending your country, or you're kind of, peacekeeping, which is what we've done a lot of between like the 90s and the early 2000s. And I know we've kind of pulled out recently from that, and there's a lot of stuff going on overseas still, which is scary to think about because, hopefully in my lifetime, I don't have to ever see that kind of a war. But yeah, it's a scary thing to think about, that it is a potential thing that could happen. So, but yes, in this one, the Americans are able to level the playing field, sort of thing. And then in episode 8, we actually reach the outskirts of Rome, Italy, on June 1st of 1944 at the Rebatelli Air Base in Italy. And that was where the B-50 or the P-51 Mustangs were all stationed at. So we get to see a little bit of them in action, of course, and meet a couple of new characters basically at the end of the show. So on June 6th, 1944, we all know that as D-Day. So we're kind of getting like a quick shot of like over the beach being stormed and all the planes in the air helping out. And obviously we know now that the odds of Bucky and Buck being saved are growing a little bit higher. Now, of course, Buck and a couple of the other guys are able to escape early on, and Bucky gets kind of caught up right in the middle in the one prisoner camp that he ends up in, and has to pull down the German flag and raise up the American one so that they know that it's been overtaken, right, this base that they're in. So I believe August 1944, which was 2 months after D-Day, Operation Dragoon takes place in Toulon, France. And by this point, we're kind of getting crunched, very close to like the Allies reaching the prisoners of war. So we go to Stalag XIII. Forgive me for not knowing what exactly that number is in Roman numerals, but this is in Nuremberg, Germany, on April 2nd, 1945. We're traveling down the road to Birching, which is in Bavaria, Germany. And then we go to Stalag VII, which is in the Bavarian countryside south of Nuremberg. And then we get to Moosburg, Germany. And I think that was pretty much the end of the German reign at that point in time, because every prisoner of war had basically been saved. And then, of course, we get to the Netherlands, where we're just delivering food. So the Germans had, I guess, kept their truce. And then that was on May 1st of 1945. And then 7 days later, on May 8th, 1945, the war is over and everybody is able to return home. So, forgive me if I maybe don't remember every single point that I wrote down, but I tried to keep it as good as I could from memory anyway. But the things that I really want to talk about in the show were, now, I gave it a 9 out of 10, and I feel like I only did that because sometimes the graphics weren't necessarily the best. Now, when they were dropping the bombs and, they were hitting the targets, that all looked very realistic. And the dogfights and stuff like that was so cool. It felt a lot of the time like you were in the plane with the crew. So, kudos to that. I feel like just Tom Hanks does such a good job at... Now, I've seen Band of Brothers and I've seen The Pacific. I actually have those, like, the tin cases, so I might search for this one in the tin case collector's edition if I can find it anywhere, because it would be one that I would be happy to add to my shelf of DVDs and movies and so on and so forth. Yeah, definitely one that I would be more than happy to add to my collection after watching it on a streaming platform. But what was I saying there? Oh yeah, it really did feel like you were in the pilot seat at some point sometimes, like when they were doing the first person view. It kind of felt like you were like in a video game or right there with the pilot. So that was pretty neat angles to see. And of course, being in the plane, watching like how tight quarters it was in those planes, even the bombers, for how big they were, it felt like a very tight space being inside that plane with such a large crew, depending on what plane they were in. Like if you were in the lead, I felt like you had the probably best chance of making it into there alive, but not always necessarily. And if you were in the back, kind of trailing, it seemed like most of the rear guys got taken out long before the first wave made it through. Right, like the first wave always seemed to be the safest. Like that's where you wanted to be because you were the first to target, sort of thing. So you weren't getting shot at nearly as much. It felt like the second and third groups kind of took a lot more of the brunt of the damage. And of course, you had to have it on autopilot when you were flying over the bombing sites. So you had really no control as to, you were just kind of going in a straight line, right? Like you had no control as to like turn left or right, so on and so forth. But I can't remember exactly what episode it was, but in the episode where all the planes get left alone, or the one, it's down to one plane that was being controlled by. Oh my God, where's my cast list here? That was being controlled by Rosie, and he brings them back. He is the only plane that comes back to the base. So that was probably one of the most intense episodes. I would say that was the most intense moment in the show, was just watching him fly the bomber like it was a fighter jet. For sure, easily the best scene in the show out of them all. And his character had a lot of development because you could kind of tell, when they gave him like his time off after that, he didn't really want to be there. He just wanted to be up in the air. He wanted to go out on a shield like a true warrior. Like he had the warrior spirit, you could say. It was almost like he had a death wish. And of course, he flew 25 missions and could have went home, but they changed the scope for everybody else after him. Now, his guys were safe. They were able to go home. But of course, I knew he would feel guilt if he had left. He just had that kind of character about him. So he ended up staying and I guess flying 52 missions. So that's incredible on its own, because to survive, a lot of the people that came over survived one mission. Like they went out and they got shot down. They were never seen again, sort of thing, right? So for him to fly 52 successful missions is incredible. And I know he got like a whole bunch of medals, obviously, for his service, right? So kudos to him for, staying behind and continuing to fly missions even after he didn't have to. Because I believe that they changed it to, was it 35 or something? Or maybe it was 33. So, like, the odds of survival, you'd have to fly at least 28 missions to even be close to, thinking you were going to make it home, sort of thing, which is crazy. But yeah, a very good show. I highly recommend watching it if you haven't. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much all I can cover. And I will see you guys. Oh, I guess I wanted to touch a little bit more on, like, it kind of showed like the evil of both sides, too, with like hitting the civilians. And obviously we all know, the German side of things, right, with what they did with the concentration camps and so on and so forth. So it showed the horrors from both sides, obviously. And it showed the horror of being in the front lines and having to be a soldier and essentially just getting killed for that too, because even though you were technically a soldier, you're still, you were a civilian at one point until you were called to arms in a world war, right? So it's an unfortunate circumstance, but yeah, for everybody obviously involved, no matter whether you had a gun in your hands, whether you were flying, whether you were in a tank, didn't matter. And it's never good for death on any side of it, right? And I think this show touched on it a little bit more than probably a lot of other war movies do. Or war movies, war shows, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, that's the other point I wanted to make, I guess. And now I will see you guys in the next review. Bye bye.